Social rules, or guidelines, if you will. We learn them from the beginning, follow them every day, and rarely do we ever stop to think about where they came from. What starts as a simple personal habit hardens into a rigid moral rule. And before you know it, personal choices get treated like statements in society. I'm Mike with List 25, and these are 25 facts about global social stigmas. 25. Left-handedness. This subtle policing of our bodies often begins in childhood. While roughly 10% of the global population is left-handed, children in parts of South Asia, the Middle East, and Africa are still pressured to switch hands. In these cultures, the left hand is frequently stigmatized as unclean, particularly regarding food or social etiquette. What's most striking is how quietly this happens. It's rarely framed as discrimination, but rather as teaching manners. As a result, many grow up believing a natural part of who they are is a flaw that needs to be disciplined out of them. 24. Mental health struggles. If you struggle with anxiety, you are labeled weak. If you face depression, you're assumed to be lazy. According to the World Health Organization, these conditions affect hundreds of millions of people. Yet stigma remains a larger barrier to treatment than cost or availability. Instead of support, the social default is to offer platitudes like pray harder or stay positive, forcing symptoms into hiding until a person's life completely falls apart. Public attitudes usually only soften when a recognizable face breaks the silence. When artists like Lady Gaga or Demi Lovato discuss their recovery, they aren't revealing something new. They're simply validating a reality that millions were already living in the shadows. 23. Divorce. While Western cultures may view it as a difficult personal choice, many other societies treat it as a permanent social label. Research points to a painful reality. Women often bear the brunt of a breakup, facing everything from financial insecurity to being shunned by their own families or religious circles. It turns what should be a legal exit from a relationship into a perceived moral failure. Many women end up trapped in toxic marriages because the social and financial cost of walking away is just too steep. 22. Being single past a certain age. Even for those who avoid the complications of divorce, the simple act of remaining single eventually stops feeling neutral. There comes a moment when family, friends, and even strangers feel entitled to offer commentary on a life that isn't theirs. Despite various research showing that more adults are staying single into their 30s and beyond, many cultures still view marriage as a deadline rather than a decision. The questions stop being about love and start leaning toward timing. Are you too picky? Are you too focused on work? These inquiries aren't looking for answers. They're signals that your life is under scrutiny for being off. 21. Disabilities. We often mistake disability for a medical hurdle, but the real barrier is often social discomfort. While over 1 billion people live with disabilities, many societies treat them as a secret to be kept, leading to forced invisibility, the exclusion of family members from wedding photos or social gatherings to avoid awkwardness. This isn't caused by a diagnosis, but by a culture of shame and a lack of access. As the late Stephen Hawking often pointed out, it is the physical barriers and social hesitation of others that limit participation far more than the condition itself. 20. Dark skin tone. Colorism works quietly, even within the same community, creating a hierarchy where lighter skin is often associated with beauty and status, while darker skin is treated as a hurdle to overcome. This isn't accidental. It traces back to colonial roots and media narratives that linked light skin to power. Today, this manifests in a multi-billion-dollar skin lightening industry marketed as a way to clean up for job interviews or marriage proposals. Even within the same ethnic groups, skin tone often acts as an unspoken gatekeeper for hiring and income. Darker skin is often treated as a flaw that needs a workaround. This isn't something enforced by the government. It's passed down at the dinner table and through offhand remarks. 19. Women eating alone. The sense of being watched follows women into even the most mundane public spaces. Think about a woman walking to a restaurant and asking for a table for one. In so many places, that simple move still draws side eyes or awkward hovering from the staff. It's as if eating alone is some kind of public performance or cry for help, rather than just a person who happens to be hungry. Writer Rebecca Solnit has noted how women in public are frequently interpreted as vulnerable or out of place simply for being alone. Sociological norms suggest that a woman needs a companion to look proper, turning a quiet dinner into an act of perceived rebellion or a sign of loneliness. 18. Men showing emotions. From a young age, boys are taught that showing pain isn't allowed. They learn to swallow hurt, stay quiet, and turn whatever they're feeling into anger instead, because that's the only emotion they're told is acceptable. This forces men to bottle things up, which eventually leads to a deep sense of isolation and burnout. It's a heavy price to pay for acting tough. While women are more frequently diagnosed with depression, the numbers for men are often hidden behind a mask of toughing it out, contributing to the devastating reality that men represent nearly 70% of self-unalivedness victims in many regions. Public reactions to male vulnerability often only soften after a crisis becomes visible. And I still can't say the word, I'm sorry, it's a YouTube thing. They are lightening it, according to news, so. 17. Talking about money. Money touches almost every choice we make. But for some reason, it's still the one thing we're terrified to talk about. We treat things like our salary, our debt, or even a bad financial decision as if they're dark secrets rather than just the logistics of life. This silence is exactly what keeps things like pay gaps and financial confusion alive. When Google employees finally started sharing their salaries publicly, they uncovered massive pay differences that have been hiding in plain sight for years, all because everyone was too polite to ask. By keeping money a taboo, we ensure that people accept unfair wages and repeat the same generational errors. 16. Body hair on women. Despite being a basic biological trait, visible hair on a woman's legs or underarms still attracts comments about hygiene that are never applied to men. This expectation is surprisingly modern. Historians point out that widespread pressure for women to remove hair only took hold in the early 20th century. Several razor companies launched aggressive marketing campaigns that framed hairlessness as a requirement for femininity and respectability. Today, what was once a simple biological reality has been successfully rebranded as a hygiene issue or a political statement. 15. Adoption. Adoption often prompts intrusive questions that biological parents never face. Do the kids want to find their real family? There's often a lingering unspoken question when people look at adoptive families. Are the parents just trying to fill a void in themselves? This discomfort usually boils down to our obsession with bloodlines. Especially in cultures where your lineage determines your place in the world, genetics are treated like the only thing that matters. Because of this, adoption is often treated as a backup plan or a deviation rather than just a beautiful way to start a family. I'm adopted. I always knew, real talk real quick. I always knew. People always ask me, when did your parents tell you? I don't remember because I've always known. So I was adopted. And I wanted to find my real family. It's biological family. They're my real family. But I always wanted to find them just out of curiosity. I'm a very curious individual. So it was always in the back of my mind. I am adopted. So. 14. Being child-free. Choosing not to have children often attracts more unsolicited opinions than the choice to have them. Society has a hard time believing that not wanting a kid is a permanent choice. People treat it like a phase you'll eventually grow out of, constantly telling you that, oh, you'll change your mind, or, oh, you're missing out on a full life. It shows up in those awkward moments when you're left out of family conversations because they're only for parents, or when relatives flat out call you selfish. Even someone as successful as Oprah Winfrey has had to spend years defending her choice to be child-free. 13. Vocational careers. Think about the last time you lost power or your sink overflowed. In those moments, a plumber or an electrician is the most important person in the world. Yet, as a society, we still treat the trades like a backup plan. It's a strange stigma to hold on to, especially when so many college grads are drowning in debt and struggling to find work. Vocational paths offer solid pay and total job security without the student loans, but parents still tend to push their kids toward a desk rather than a toolbox. 12. Acne in adults. We are taught to see acne as a teenage hurdle, which makes dealing with a breakout in your 30s or 40s feel uniquely embarrassing. Even though doctors say nearly half of adults in their 20s still deal with it due to hormones or genetics, the old stigma of uncleanliness still sticks. It's enough to make people hide away, skipping dates or networking events out of fear that they don't look put together enough. 11. Wearing thrifted clothes. The meaning of thrifted clothing changes depending on who's wearing it. If a wealthy person buys vintage, it's praised as sustainable or savvy. If a person with less status does the same, it's often perceived as a sign of financial struggle. This class-based reading of fashion forces many to downplay where their clothes came from, or hide the fact that they're secondhand entirely. It's a strange disconnect, especially considering the global resale market is now worth hundreds of billions of dollars. While the world is moving towards sustainability and intentional consumption, the social stigma hasn't quite caught up. 10. Eating fast food alone. Have you ever sat down with a quick meal in a public space and suddenly felt like every pair of eyes in the room was on you? In many cultures, the act of eating is so deeply tied to family gatherings and social status that doing it solo can trigger immediate unspoken assumptions. People often wonder if something went wrong in your personal life, as if sitting with a tray of fries were a sign of social failure rather than a simple matter of hunger or a busy schedule. While fast food adds a layer of class-based judgment, most solo meals are driven by the practicalities of modern life. Grueling work shifts, long commutes, or the isolation of travel. 9. Accents. Before people can even process what you're saying, they often judge how you sound first. Certain accents are treated as professional or intelligent, while others are linked to assumptions about education or competence, even when communication is perfectly clear. These biases influence hiring decisions, courtroom credibility, and media portrayals, forcing many people to code switch, consciously softening or hiding their natural speech to avoid being dismissed. 8. Therapy. For something designed to heal, therapy still carries a weight that makes many hesitate to walk through the door. A common misconception is that you must be in the middle of a total life crisis to seek help, causing many to ignore everyday stress or burnout until things completely fall apart. Instead of viewing an appointment as an admission of being broken, we should see it as the process of learning life skills that most of us were simply never taught. Think of it like physical therapy for the mind. You don't wait for a bone to shatter before you start taking care of your strength, do you? 7. Job status. Society depends on the daily work of cleaners, delivery drivers, and warehouse staff, yet we often treat these essential workers as if they're invisible. During the global pandemic, these roles were officially labeled essential, but the social respect granted to them faded almost as soon as the lockdowns ended. A person's job prestige often dictates how much patience and politeness they're shown by the public, regardless of how vital their labor is to the local economy. Instead of valuing the work that keeps our world running, we continue to rank human worth based on a job title, forgetting that a functional society requires every one of these roles to be filled with dignity. 6. Infertility. For many, the pressure to start a family begins almost immediately after a wedding, manifesting in constant, uninvited questions about when will you be having kids? While infertility affects millions worldwide and involves medical factors for both partners, the cultural blame still falls disproportionately on women. These private medical challenges frequently turned into uncomfortable public conversations filled with unsolicited advice. For some reason, struggling to have children is rarely treated with the same privacy or empathy as any other health issue. Instead of being given space to heal, people are forced to navigate their grief under the heavy weight of everyone else's expectations. 5. LGBTQ+ identities. It's one thing to have legal protection on paper, but it's another thing entirely to feel safe in your own neighborhood. For many LGBTQ+ individuals, life becomes a series of exhausting split-second calculations. Is it safe to hold hands here? Can I be myself around these coworkers? Even in supposedly progressive places, that constant need to scan the room for safety never really goes away. This is most visible in the closet at work phenomenon, where an employee might keep their desk bare of family photos to avoid a subtle shift in how colleagues treat them. It isn't just about privacy. It's about the forced burden of deciding, hour by hour, when it's safe to exist as your full self. 4. Widowhood. Losing a partner is a devastating tragedy, but in many cultures, it's treated as a public performance with strict unwritten rules. For many women, mourning is not allowed to be private. Instead, society expects them to dress in dark colors and limit their social lives for years. If a widow tries to move on, she's judged as disrespectful. Yet if she remains withdrawn, she's merely doing what's considered proper. This turns mourning into a trap, leading to higher rates of isolation for women compared to widowers, who are often encouraged to resume normal life almost immediately. 3. Illness stigma. Certain medical diagnoses change the way the world looks at you the second they're mentioned. Conditions like HIV, epilepsy, or mental illness still trigger deep-seated fears that have nothing to do with actual medical risk. People often worry about contagion where none exists, or assume the person is responsible for their own suffering. This reaction creates a really dangerous cycle. People end up hiding their symptoms just to protect their jobs or keep their friends, which only delays the help they actually need. 2. Being too educated. It's strange that education can actually cause problems between people. We're taught that knowledge is power, but the moment that knowledge makes other people uncomfortable, the vibe changes. It leads to this exhausting habit of intellectual camouflaging, where you find yourself hiding your degree or dumbing down your vocabulary just to avoid being called pretentious. It shows that expertise is usually only welcomed as long as it doesn't shake up the status quo. It's a shame that after all that work to get a seat at the table, people feel they have to downplay their intelligence just to stay in the room. 1. Speaking up. Ultimately, these stigmas all do the same thing. They keep people quiet. We love to tell others to find their voice, but the reality is that the reaction to that voice depends entirely on who's doing the talking. The exact same behavior can be labeled as leadership in one person and aggression in another. Women and marginalized groups frequently experience this double standard, where asserting a boundary is seen as being difficult rather than proactive. This leads to the silence of the room, where people wait for someone else to voice an idea they've already had, fearing that speaking first will get them labeled as pushy. Over time, this makes silence feel like the only safe option, killing honesty and innovation in the process. The true power of a stigma isn't that it's right, it's that it's familiar. We follow these rules because everyone else does. But as we've seen, many of them are nothing more than relics of history, old marketing campaigns, or misplaced fear. Breaking a stigma doesn't require a grand revolution. It starts with a quiet, daily decision to stop judging the ordinary and to stop demanding an explanation for the personal. Once you realize these rules are often arbitrary, they lose their power to make you feel small. Thank you guys so much for watching. If any of these hit home for you, or if there's a stigma we missed, let me know in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, share, subscribe with that notification bell, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.